welcome back to the show, everybody. We are back in the studio with a super special guest. We have Mr. Stephen Wayda joining us, and Stephen Wayda is the third and final photographer for us that it was very essential that we got his interview on the show for multiple reasons. Stephen Wayda is the most published photographer in Playboy's history. He shot the most celebrity pictorials, most covers with the likes of Carmen Electra, Kim Kardashian, Jenna Jameson, Barbie twins. He's worked with a plethora of celebrities, Denzel Washington, Travis Barker comes to mind, and the list goes on. And we'll get into that. Stephen can tell us more about particular people that he worked with or favorite memories. And I know that there's some funny stories that go along with being on a shoot or and hiccups that may have arrived. Also best known for his affiliation with Pamela Anderson. All of the publications that Pamela was featured in were shot by Stephen, and they had a very close working relationship, and the best of the best was always conceived together between Stephen and Pamela, and it shows in the pictures. Real quickly, I want to read a letter that Hugh Hefner had written. It was an homage, really, to Stephen. And so I'm going to read it. And it was it speaks volumes in terms of what it says and about Stephen's character and his work. So from Hugh Hefner, for over 30 years, Stephen Wayda has shared my dream and vision. From an inauspicious start at Playboy, he has become the most published photographer in the history of Playboy, and that's a huge accolade. His photographs have helped Playboy in changing the way the world looks at women and changed the way women look at the world. His influence on photography cannot be overstated. His evolving styles, his sense of sexuality, coupled with the personality of his photographic subjects, brought the Playboy dream from the fantasy of decadence and passion in Paris to the charm of the girl next door in the wheat fields of Texas, all to life. In his heart, he is a cowboy whose job has brought him into contact with the world's most beautiful women. Playboy is read for its photographs, and what the reader saw in his photographs for Playboy was the American dream made real. So we're going to start there. All right.
Well, thank you very much.
You're
being very You're being very gracious. Thank you.
Well, it's important, and our audience loves to hear, all the back history and put it all into context. And I'm telling you, every time we do an interview, we just pull out this golden nugget of history that we didn't know about, and it just adds a lot of context to the show. So we're going to start with your venture into Playboy and how you even ended up there. So, Stephen, you were at Playboy from 1983 to 2013, correct?
That's correct, yes. That's the 30 years that have references.
Okay. And tell us about, I know that you were plucked from obscurity, and you shared that story with me, but share with the audience, because it's really interesting.
Well, I never planned to be a photographer. And it happened very serendipitously. Out of college, I became a newspaper reporter. And from there, I started doing pictures to go with my stories. I created a process where you could get photographs to reproduce in letterpress. Now, you're all too young to know what letterpress is, but it was just something that was gray. There was no whites, there was no darks or blacks. There was just gray type, gray paper, gray everything. So I created a process where a coat like this, you could see the lapels. And from there, I started to do fashion work for a local department store.
Okay.
And then I lost that job. And so I met Dwight Hooker, who was a Playboy photographer that was retiring. He had come to Utah to be to go to architectural school. So he was now doing building houses in Robert Redford's Sundance Ski Resort. And he wanted to keep his connection with Playboy, so he was doing What Sort of Man Reads Playboy, which is a service ad where our hero is good looking and gracious, and he's doing all these adventurous things while his girl is with him. Okay. And so that's where it gets to what sort of man reads Playboy.
Right.
So I start showing him pictures, and he wasn't very encouraging. At one point, he's looking at the pictures, and he's going, "Well, good thing you have a day job, because you're never going to be a Playboy photographer." So
oh my gosh.
I,
What a
I
statement.
yes, I've been told that more than once. So, so I kept sending pictures into Playboy. I get rejected, I get accepted, I get another job, go back and forth. Then Marilyn had me come down, and I interviewed with her. I went back to Chicago because she was in a competition with Chicago. Hef told Chicago and Maryland to find the next centerfold photographer. And so, and Chicago didn't want to lose this, because they had a very tough relationship with Maryland, because she had access to Hef and she could do anything she wanted.
Yes, and I know that. And let me actually tell the audience as well, because this was really interesting background that you told me, that Marilyn Grabowski was originally in the Chicago offices working as a secretary, right?
She was, yes.
And Chicago said, hey, do you guys want to go, or anybody want to go to LA to open up a studio?
And she did, and Mario Casilli was the only photographer there. And from that, she was essentially in a job was a no-end job.
Dead end. Yeah.
I was another one that wasn't expected to do anything out of high school. They said I'd be good at McDonald's. So I, both of us were kind of rejects trying to find our way, and Marilyn became one of the most important editors in magazine publishing. She was there with Anna Whitnor of Vogue and Jules Campbell of Sports Illustrated. Yeah. So you get this competition going. Okay. They had a meeting in the mansion, and Marilyn says, I want you guys to go on a competition. And so she had a lot of other people to choose from, but for whatever reason, she chose me because I didn't know much of anything. And Chicago chose David Meese. So they flew me back to...
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they flew me back to Chicago to interview with everybody back there. And I walked through the studio and I looked at all this equipment. I said, I don't know how to use any of this. I don't know what I'm going to do. So, it was just, yeah, you're going to go. It's like I did on a lot of things. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure something out.
Figure it out.
Yeah. So I gave Marilyn 2 women from Utah that she accepted and she wanted as playmates. And she said she would let me photograph one, and at the same time let me watch Ken Marcus, how he did his centerfolds.
Okay.
And I don't know if she was serious in it or she was just trying to get the girls. I think Dwight had told me that she wasn't ever going to accept me. I don't have I never went to photo school. I never went to art school. All the other guys did that. So he told me she would never accept me. What do you think?
Right. And also tell us the story about Jeff Cohen, because I thought that was fascinating when you shared with me. So Jeff Cohen was an editor, photographer out of Chicago. I worked a ton with him and all the newsstand specials, but share with the audience what he told you as well. So the second person to tell you you're not going to be.
Well, Marilyn wanted Chicago to give me an assignment. Okay. Because, I was looking to make the cut. And so Maryland sent me to Alaska for Girls of Alaska. And I went and took a lot of pictures, went a lot of places. And when I got back, sent the film to Chicago, wasn't anything on the film. The shutter on the lens had come apart. It was a Nikon lens, so
Oh my
everything
God.
back then, it wasn't doing Polaroids because I didn't know anything about a Polaroid back or taking Polaroids to set up with. So went to Jeff because he did the Girls Of, and he looked at the pictures and said, they're a disaster. You don't have anything here. I'm going to send David Meese, and I'm not going to send him to Alaska. I'm going to send him someplace else, give him a chance. So in our conversation, he said to me, it's unfortunate you don't have the talent to match your opportunities.
Wow.
So,
That's wild.
yeah. So Jeff won, he was Marilyn's rival.
Okay.
And they fought tooth and nails. And Marilyn wasn't going to let Chicago win.
Right.
Yeah. So after, I watched Ken Marcus, we then took my other woman from Utah, and we did a centerfold on her. And we did it on location in Utah. And centerfolds are not good on location because there's a thing called the sun, and it moves. So your light changes constantly.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do in a studio. I mean, centerfolds would take 5 to 10 days, and they're a process of building. I sent you the Polaroids that I have. And I'm the only one that has those Polaroids. I'm the only one that has the diagrams.
And it was Jamie Bergman and the Polaroids, my bestie. I love Jamie.
So, yeah, I mean, there's
multiples, but yeah, that's what I saw.
I've got a lot. But now the original 8x10s Polaroids that look just like they did when I took them 40 years ago. I don't know how they've survived, but I keep them all.
Isn't that wild? Up. Yeah.
Yeah. So I did my centerfold. We did it in location. Marilyn didn't like it because it was a little problematical, so we did it again in the studio. That was Susie Scott. So Marilyn sent Susie Scott, and Jeff sent Susie Schott, I think her name was, dark-haired woman. That was David's last centerfold. He went on to work.
Oh, yeah.
He went on to work the Girls Of and was Jeff's boy, and I became Mo's boy. And it was good because she protected me. She had a vested interest in me because I was her choice, and she could not lose to Chicago.
So what year was that you guys went off to LA to start the studio?
Well, she had already had the studio going with Mario Casilli, and she had built up a relationship with Hef because he moved from Chicago out to Hominy Hills. So she had direct access with him, which gave her a lot of power over Chicago. The story of Anna Nicole Smith was that Chicago had never really seen her, and they absolutely said no to her being Playmate of the Year.
And why? Because she was big and curvy and bad boob job, and you didn't know how the hell you were going to shoot her and da-da-da-da-da.
Well, because she was, in Gary Cole's words, she wasn't the type of woman they wanted as Playboy of the Year. Because she was a stripper. She was a stripper. She was running around with a 90-year-old millionaire. And it wasn't the best backstory. So, but Marilyn changed her name from her. She came to us as Vicky Smith.
Right.
And so, in Chicago, the only thing they saw were the pictures that Marilyn sent that I had taken. They never met her before she was named Playmate of the Year.
Wow.
They got it shoved down their throats by Marilyn going to Hef.
To Hef,
So,
yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
then Hef obviously fell in love with the whole pictorial. I mean, she was incredible in front of the camera. What a beautiful woman. And then,
That's what I found that I had to do with her. Because if you look at the pictures I did of her, there's not a lot of nudity in them. You'd see
hmm
glimpses of nudity here, glimpses of nudity there. What I worked with was her face, and a magnificent face, and her
hmm
attitude. And I
hmm
just let her roll, okay? I just let her go, and she gave you sexy pictures that you believe she was talking to you and not to the
hmm
camera. And
Yeah,
so
she
it
really
was
knew
that
how to
added,
work that camera. Yeah.
and that was from her days being a stripper.
hmm
So that's
Okay,
why
so it
that's
added some benefit to her becoming Playmate of the Year for being a stripper. Who
well,
would have known?
yeah, well, that's why Gary didn't want her. So between that
Right,
and Marshall, her boyfriend, so
right, right, right,
and
right.
she was married at the time with a child while she was having the affair with Marshall.
Oh,
So
that's right. That's
she
right.
was not the image of what you normally think of for Playmate of the Year. But her
Sure.
pictures for guests were spectacular. And she became, on top of that, Claudia Schiffer, who I also photographed, was Marciano's girlfriend at the time.
Oh,
And
I didn't know
she,
that they were dating. I never
yeah,
knew that.
yeah, because she was the face of Guest. She has a
Right,
very
right.
famous picture
Oh,
of
yeah.
her from the side for Guest. Um, but then when Anna came, Claudia, he said goodbye to Claudia and made Anna the girlfriend.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
love it. Spill the
So,
tea.
and that went for a while until the next girl came along. And, Anna was difficult. She drank a lot. Um, she she had a mood swings. When I would photographing her, she'd go in the studio, I mean, in the makeup, she'd just sit there. Nothing would come out of her. Nothing.
Hmm.
And
hmm
then, you take her out on set, and still there was no communications or anything. And then you pick up the camera, and it's boom, she's on. So, and she goes, just, you let her run. I move her this
Yeah.
way, I move her that way. I show a little breast, I show a little butt, I show a little leg. But if you look at her shooting, she doesn't have a lot of nudity because she was not like you or Karina or anybody
hmm
else. She did not have a Playboy body. She was a plus size girl.
Interesting.
And that's one of the things I get irritated about because fashion magazines are now saying, we're doing plus size.
I
We're doing a black girl. We did Anna
Yeah.
Nicole Smith
Yeah.
as a plus, 40 years ago, and the first black girl that appeared in Playboy was about 5 or 10 years before. It was in the early in the 70s somewhere. And the fashion magazines make a big deal of what they're doing, but they've been behind Playboy. Playboy
Yeah.
was leading. I mean, Playboy was not part of the elites on the coast, okay? Los Angeles, New York, and that.
hmm
But it dealt with the rest of America, okay? It talked, like Hef says, it's the girl next door. It's the girl that you might meet that you hope that if you have the chance, you could possibly date, okay?
Right.
She's not a supermodel. She's not a celebrity in any sense. We eventually worked our ways into celebrities. But at
hmm
that time, it was all about this girl next door that, you know, could be
Yeah.
somebody you would know. So,
Isn't that the truth? After I think it was at Anna Nicole's Playmate of the Year party. Yeah, it would have been. I met Marciano there, and then he wanted me to shoot for guests, and I actually went and did like a whole day with them shooting. Never signed anything, never got paid, and then they ran my images
no, really?
nationally. Yes, and I never got paid, and I went to Playboy, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" Like. They're like, oh, it was just a test. I'm like, it's published in Vogue and like Italy, like, and they did not want to intervene because they didn't want to step on Marciano's toes because of that relationship that
Yeah.
they had. Interesting,
because
huh?
there was a number of girls that went from Playboy to Marciano to Guest.
I
Um,
bet.
I can think of two or three that
I know
definitely
Sandy
did.
Taylor. Did you ever shoot with Sandy Taylor?
I did. The cover of her with all the fireworks behind, with
Okay.
sparklers of the
Yeah.
Playboy. Uh,
Yeah.
I did that. I took her to the Bahamas,
Uh-huh.
and we kind of had interesting times there because you know Alexis, right?
Alexis
The makeup
Vogel,
artist.
yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Alexis had a way of doing makeup, and it
Of
was
course.
very specific. So I had Sandy in the water on the beach, wave hit her, and took off one of her eyelashes. And so
Uh-oh.
I talked to, I tell Alexis, you got to put it back on. I can't. I don't have the glue. Da, 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 da. I say, well, I got to shoot. I can't give this up because
Yeah.
we only have so many days. So I then walked up to Sandy and took the other eyelash and ripped it off
Get rid of
and
that one.
get rid of that one. And Alexis left the set. She was
She
gone.
was not happy.
She was not happy because I had, ruined her makeup. I didn't ruin it. The wave did. So, but
Yeah,
I had
no,
to do
you were,
what
yeah,
I
do
needed
what
to
you
do.
had
What
to
I
do.
needed to do. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but I can totally see Alexis like responding like that because, and my
yeah.
God, the best makeup artist in the world. It's like if you ever try to emulate her makeup, it's like you can never even come close. So I bet she was like, "My art, don't touch my art." I can
she
totally
did.
imagine.
Did she do yours, or who did your makeup?
Yeah, yeah, I always worked with Alexis. She was my favorite.
Yeah, she couldn't make. I mean, she just made you look great. She
Yeah.
was
You
always
didn't want to
there.
take their
So
makeup off when you went home. I always remember going to the
no.
mansion and I was like, I'm going to go out. I'm not going to use this. This is bomb. So I'd
Yes,
always figure out
definitely.
something to do.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So let's get into Pamela Anderson. You spent 19 years photographing Pam, and you said that she was so pleasant and fun to work with.
She was. She was very genuine. Uh, she was always. Uh, she had a good work ethic. Well, she almost always had a good work ethic. one time in France, we were there to shoot, and she had to go to Monaco or
Oh,
Monte
Pam?
Carlo.
Oh, Monte
Yeah,
Carlo.
and they had a big fashion show, and there was the top male model, Schenkenberg.
They were
And
dating
so,
Marcus Schenkenberg. Yeah.
yeah, so she didn't come back for the shooting. She went to there to do an introduction, a short thing, but she stayed and they had their affair. And we had I think, a 10-day stay there. And then
Hmm.
Playboy didn't want to change our return. So we had 10 days in France, in Saint Tropez. It was a paid vacation. So,
Hmm.
and
Exactly.
then she came back, and I worked with her in Santa Barbara. But yeah, for the most part, she was always on. She always knew how to work the camera. She always knew what to give you. She always knew um, how she looked the best, and she
Just
was a joy to work
quintessential.
with. Yeah, she
Hmm.
was a joy to work with. And then she learned real quick. She did a couple things for Playboy. Um, and then she got the TV show. She got Tool
Baywatch.
Time. Became
Or Tool.
she
Oh,
became the
yeah,
Tool
that
Time
one.
girl.
Yeah,
She first
right,
did that. Then she got
right.
on Baywatch. Okay, and when she got on Baywatch, she was portrayed as a California surf girl, beach girl.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we took her to San Tropez because Marilyn thought she should look like um,
Bridget
yes,
Bardot. Bridget Bardot.
Bridget Bardot. Yeah. So we were going to San Tropez. Now, I went with Alexis, okay? And the idea was to make her a diva, to make her get rid of the um, beach girl look and
Okay.
make her into the style you saw that she carried on up till
Right.
the last time I photographed her. You know, she's changed the style a lot now, but Alexis always did her makeup for the whole
Always.
time. And, you know, and she became, with, you know, the bigger hair, the heavy makeup, um, she looked like a movie star now. So,
Yeah, completely.
and that was, you know, that was, so I changed, you know, lighting on her. I changed how she shot. Alexis changed her makeup. So,
You know, that's actually like a good segue because you had mentioned this before of like the difference between how Arnie Freytag and Ken Marcus, you know, would shoot, and it was they wanted girls pose, and you had a very different approach to taking photographs for Playboy that was unlike anything that the photographers had done. You know, and the one thing that you had said, you didn't see how posing and sexuality went together. Posing did not make any sense, and you threw that out the window and got a lot more sexuality out of the images, which when you look at them, you can see it's a vast difference from what the other photographers were shooting, in my opinion.
it was. You can think, you can realize why Chicago was always unhappy with me,
Sure,
because
sure.
I was changing lighting, I was changing what was used, I was changing sets. You know, when they started, the set on Ken Marcus that I watched had probably 7 or 8 lights. Well, when I was doing centerfolds, I had 42 lights. I had a light
Dang.
everywhere. And so,
Wow.
yeah, so I wanted the lighting to look real, not
Uh-huh.
like it was an artificial light. So it was very
Right,
important to me that it was like how your eye sees things, not
right,
how the camera would see things. And
right.
like I said, like you just mentioned, I looked at this and I said, this doesn't make sense. Sex has movements, it has spontaneity, it has um, feelings to it, it had movement. And and Marilyn and the other photographers, they fought over who was the best poser, Marilyn or the
Mm,
photographer. Arnie used to fight with her, used to hate her coming on set because she would
really?
change his poses. Yeah, and they didn't get along very well. But so when I came on, she let me run. You know, she gave me the opportunity to innovate and, you know, try different things. Uh, Sometimes fail, sometimes succeed. She always
Yeah,
protected me, you know,
right,
because I got in
right.
trouble. I got in trouble with Hef a lot, um, because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't what he was used to. Um, but he loved it. That's why he wrote what he wrote to me, because I was the only one that did it. Most photographers in the fashion world would either have movement or no movement. And I
Hmm.
did both. I moved, I sat up, I still, you know, just let's see what happens. And, you know, if you look at, especially the pictures that don't get published,
Hmm.
there's not explicit, but they're very sexy. They just
Hmm.
have a sexual feel to them.
Hmm.
And, you know, that's more or less why I kept my job, because there was always somebody out the door, a line of people out the door willing to take my job.
Oh,
And
of
so,
course. Yeah.
yeah, so I was in trouble a lot. Okay. And, you know, what Hef talks about from an inauspicious start, that was an inauspicious start. That he wrote that in the tribute, you know, that I
Right.
went from that where I was essentially fired.
Right.
So,
Right. I
yeah.
mean, didn't he even tell you at one point, you know, I am the publisher and what I want gets published? Like, didn't it come to that point? Because you would just
Yes.
shoot.
Well, that was over. There was a celebrity that was on the Apprentice, and I
Uh-huh.
photographed her, and I was always conscious of doing what the women were going to feel comfortable with, you know. And so there was this one situation. She was in a limousine. Her legs were open. She had underwear on, uh, and she was, you know, very enticing in the limousine.
Sure.
But when you looked at the film, and she had said, you know, I don't want, you know, have a, you know, any explicitness to it. I said, oh, it's not going to happen. You got underwear on, it's fine.
Yeah.
So when the film came back, the light went through the underwear and there was full explicitness.
Okay.
And that shot got into the magazine, into the layout. Now, Hef doesn't see anything but the film. He sees the film, and the film has that little bit. It wasn't really explicit, but it was something I knew she wasn't going to be happy with. So I had Ben, who was my assistant, and this was on the digital days, and I told him to make those panties opaque. So when Hef got the so when Hef got the edition, he looked at that, looked at what the other one was, and called me up and said, you got to understand, I'm the publisher of this. I'm not expecting to have things changed between the pictures and the publishing, and yes, sir. Okay. So
that's wild. I mean, that's like,
yeah.
that's bold. That's ballsy. I gotta say that to you.
I was pretty ballsy.
And
I could be very difficult, okay,
yeah.
because I wanted to do things my way. I wanted the equipment that I wanted. I mean, there was a stage there where, they bought Arnie and I 32 strobe packs and heads, and each pack was about $10,000.
Holy
So,
moly.
and then I went and I wanted this light that was $10,000. I
And
got it.
you got it. Yeah. Well,
I got it.
that's something that that we have found out from conducting these interviews is that there was no expense spared whatsoever. Whatever it took to get the shot, you were going to do it, whether it was on location or reshooting a centerfold, wardrobe, whatever, you getting lighting. And it's always so interesting to hear that. And then also Hef's keen eye, like he even knew the photographers that were taking the pictures of him all the time within the mansion, right? Documenting.
Uh-huh.
If there was one slide that was gone, and it was like one of him looking down at a dog or something, and I forget Larry Logan told us this story. And Larry had taken the slide out because his eyes were closed or something. And Hef was like, don't you ever take a slide out. You leave all the film there. Like he knew exactly. So when he saw that what you had done, it was like, ah! But the attention to detail and then that no cost was ever spared whatsoever in achieving what the goal was. And that was to get the perfect shot.
Yeah,
and you can't find a company that you would work with in today's day and age that would remotely spend close to what they did to achieve those results.
Yes. I'll tell you a quick little story and then I'll make a comment on that. A lot of times studio would send me places and without asking me. And my crews knew that when we got there, don't unpack because he's going to change. We're going to go somewhere else.
Right.
So I was sent to St. Martin's, and we got a nice villa. It's up on the hill. The beach is crowded. It's a little tiny beach that's full of tourists. So I said, "Oh, look, I need to get to the Bahamas. I know a place I can go there. I need a plane." So send a Learjet.
Yep.
That's So as far as no expense, because people will look at my photographs now and they say, "Oh, I want to look like like in Playboy."
Yeah.
And I just, can you make me do that? Can you make me look like that? Got $250,000. I can do that.
Right. Right.
But nobody realizes how complex. I mean, my shootings were very, very complex. Like we built a set in the studio, and I'd have, like I say, 42 lights plus the main lights, and guys in the back that would be moving the lights so the girls could move. So,
that's always something I like to talk about with the photographers because nobody understands how complex it was and what it took just to get your centerfold. I mean, that was a grueling experience for us personally. I mean, 5 to 7 days in a pose that you cannot move out of. It was brutal. But there was so much that went into it, every, finite detail. And it's like nobody would know that unless you were on set or a part of putting that all together, you know? You just get the picture if
Yeah.
that's what people see, but there's so much that went into it.
Well, in the Polaroids I sent you, there's an 8 by 10 progression of how
Mm-hmm.
it starts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like on Susie Scott. She's on she's in Utah. She's on a porch. It's so cold. She's in a jacket, and I'm trying to set up the lighting, because we had to get something because that's what we were committed to. But in the
Mm-hmm.
studio, the lighting is more controlled, and you keep adding, you make changes. So if you look at those Polaroids, the the the, the pose is one thing in the beginning; it's a different thing in the end. But
Mm-hmm.
and I would get in trouble because I couldn't come back to what I did the day before. I didn't know that concept. And so with the girl, she would have, she would have some idea of what she was doing. And so we'd start there, and each day became better. So
Yeah.
Marilyn then did not insist that I hold that pose. And some of the poses were so that the other guys did. I mean, they'd faint on set. Both
Yeah.
Arnie and
Yeah.
Ken had ladies that fainted, and I said, I can't get a sexual expression. You know what Ken Marcus said to me? He says, I make them do these poses, and they can't. When I'm finished with them, they can't get up because they can't walk,
Yeah.
and they hate me. They hate me, and he says, and I do that because the look of hate and love are the same, and they're not going to
Oh,
love me.
that's interesting. And that
Yeah.
that makes me think about my centerfold because it was so hard for me. And I don't know, I was 18. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was just going into this whole new world. But every Polaroid that they would print out, I would look miserable. I was crying. I looked pissed. So they kept drawing the devil horns on all my Polaroids. And I remember Marilyn coming in probably towards the end of my shoot and was like, just give her a shot of tequila, something. And then somehow we were able to capture it. But I can tell when I look in my photo that I was in total pain and I was pissed. Yeah.
No, I made sure my girls were happy. I
Right. And
took care of
that's
them.
the difference. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Do you have any like standout centerfolds that are your favorite that you shot or you worked with that come to mind?
well, not on the centerfolds. Pam was great.
Yeah.
Um, I did a shooting with Edmondson. What's her
Oh,
first
Donna.
name? No, did her shooting, but no,
Hmm.
this was we shot her in a set that looked like we were in Paris, and
Oh, cool.
she was fabulous, and the lighting was fabulous, and she just gave a lot of sexuality to it. I mean, for the most part, everybody gave great sexuality. I mean, I can only think of one or two that I really struggled with,
Mm,
But other than that, because I would sit and I would talk to them beforehand, ask what
mm,
their expectations were. These are my expectations. This is what's going to be going on. You're going to go into makeup. You're going to come out. We're going to do this. So everybody went in knowing what the process was going to be.
hmm.
And there was never any, well, I'm going to pose you and set you up. We're going to find something together that you feel comfortable with, gives me. And, if you look at my stuff, the other guys had to have this curve in the waist and the hips out, and the boobs in a certain direction. And Marilyn, felt she was the queen of posing, and the guys
Hmm.
thought they were the best at it.
Hmm.
But she let me run with not posing people. So every day on a centerfold was a little different than the day before.
Right. And you also said that it was really important to you that when shooting the models that you were shooting for them, so they would be thrilled when they would see their images published versus what Arnie and the other photographers would do is they were shooting for Hef and for Playboy and you had a lot
Yeah,
more.
I didn't go to art school. I didn't go to photography school. I didn't know how to work the equipment when I first got there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, so my approach was just different because the other guys, I don't want to, I guess I'm bad mouthing everybody or I'm saying something. They were the photographer. And
Yeah.
some of them said, these are not your pictures, these are my pictures. Okay.
Right.
And
Right.
if somebody probably told you along the way that those were
Yeah.
his pictures and he
Mm-hmm.
wants to do them this way and you need to go along with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my deal was these are not my pictures. Those are the woman's pictures. She needs to be happy with them. She needs to come away saying this is the best experience I've ever had. I'm just so
Right.
happy that I did this. So, and that brought a
Yeah.
lot more attitude because I was always looking for attitude. It had to have attitude to it. It
Yeah.
couldn't, because in posing, I don't see how anybody got attitude. It had to be created. I don't know, your experience, you shot with Arnie probably.
Arnie. Mm-hmm.
Well,
It
there's a
was what it
difference.
was. Yeah. It was different. It was different. But, my God, at the end of the day, my photographs are absolutely gorgeous. And I was told I top 3 most published playmates of all time. And I thought that was amazing. I know that I'm in all the Playboy books. I did 10 covers. You shot the Seinfeld cover with the group of us in the phone booth.
Yes, in the
That was,
phone booth.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that was a
So
super fun one.
you had 10 US or 10 total Playboy?
So two US, and then 7 of the newsstand specials, and then 2, one German and one, I want to say Norway, which just came out or the Netherlands, which just came out, I don't know, maybe 6 years ago. A fan sent it to me. And it was from a photo shoot that David and I had done for the newsstand specials in Austin for Wet and Wild. Just picture me coming out of a pool, and they put that on the cover. And I was like, cool, here's my 10th cover. So, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. That was always funny because, I actually shot all my covers. That was just the one time that they reused another image, but they would do that quite often as they would go into the archives and pull images and run it as a cover. And you would have no idea, and it'd come out. You'd be like, "Oh, I'm on a cover. Who knew?"
Yeah, yeah. I was not a fan. I mean, I was not a fan. Jeff, why would you say this? Jeff didn't care for me.
Yeah,
he was very
as I could tell.
he's very gracious at the end, but at that time, I was Marilyn's boy,
Yeah,
and so
yeah.
I was Marilyn's boy to such an extent that when they did the Girls Next Door, Marilyn didn't think it was going to go anywhere, and so
Really,
there was a request that I do the shooting. Marilyn said, "No, I got things for him to do. I'm not going to let him do it. And it's not going to go anywhere." So she gave it to Arnie, and Arnie got tons of pictures, lots of publicity, and did a great job with it. But Marilyn was so possessive, she wasn't going to have me do something that wasn't going to work in her mind.
Right.
And she was wrong because it became a big hit.
I love that. The history with you and Marilyn. I didn't realize it was, that extensive and that profound. And you credit Marilyn with your success as a photographer, and then goes into the project you're working on, which we'll get into in a minute. It's a little nugget of history that we pulled out from you. Tell me about the photo shoot that you did with Pam and Tommy Lee.
That was a picture for a swimsuit company. And
Oh, okay.
So Pam and the crew, we went down to Cancun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Pam had just met Tommy at one of I think it was the bar she was a partner in.
Wait, you guys, the reason why she was down in Cancun was because you guys were shooting for the swimsuit company, and then Tommy said, "I'm coming down." Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And Pam said, no, don't come down. So he
Yeah.
did. He came down. He's in the bar. He calls. Um, she says, no, I can't because I'm working. And he's very persistent. Okay. And she's a little stressed out from the persistence. I don't know who Tommy Lee is. I don't listen to glam rock. I mean, you know, I'm a country fan, and on my sets
Awesome.
it was probably disco because that got everybody up and it was a dance
Yeah.
situation. It wasn't glam rock. So I didn't know who he was. I was going to talk to management about having him thrown out or having him deported.
Oh my
She
gosh,
said,
how funny.
and she says, no, 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 let it be. And so she then goes out with him, and Alexis goes and Jennifer goes, and he had two of his friends there. And so
Right.
they'd party all night long. There was a lot of
Dom
Dom
Perignon.
Perignon.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Pam had told Tommy he wasn't going to have, she was not going to have sex with him. He was a wild man, and he
Right.
wasn't, and he was intent on, well, to not. I don't think it was just to have sex with her, but it was
To
to
be with
have
her.
a connection, to be with her.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they had that one night together, and I came in the morning, and he was just leaving, and his clothes, some of his clothes, underwear there, some clothes were still there,
Mm-hmm.
and she'd been up all night having sex, drinking, and I got a camera and I just started taking pictures. I took
Mm-hmm.
the pictures after pictures, and she was, she was very animated. And so I took the pictures back to when I got them processed. I took them over to Playboy. I said, "Would you like to publish these?" And F said, "No. What I'd like to do is put them in the safe, and you can have them when you leave." So
Really
they were in the safe for 18 years.
interesting.
Hef did not feel that she portrayed the image. She was to him, she was the DNA of Playboy. And she was
Oh,
looking,
and that just went against the grain completely.
yeah, it
Ah,
changed her image because she looked
sure.
a little drunk, a little tired, a little
Yeah.
just having
Yeah.
sex.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so
It was a
they went
whirlwind.
they went into the safe, and I didn't get them until I retired in 2013.
That's wild. I love that story. I love that he gave him back to you. But I could, yeah, okay, that makes sense now that he is like, no, this is not going to go in line with what we portray of Pamela. Interesting.
So there's a
Let me ask you.
backstory on everything.
Yeah, yeah, there's a backstory and everything. So I recently was talking to Sia or Shane Barbie. I was trying to get her to come on the interview with Greg Gorman, who was the photographer that discovered me, right? And that's how my career started with Playboy. And he had worked a lot with them. But Shane shared some funny stories with me of shooting with you. And, her and her sister were out of their fucking minds because they were so sick from their eating disorder and they were total divas. And she says that. She's like, when we finally got well, like we made our amends and we called Hef and we called Greg Gorman and whoever else and just apologized profusely because they were just a nightmare to work with. But apparently, so she was telling me that they had gone down there and it's one of their worst like binging sessions, and so they kept pushing back the shoot. Is that right? And then they were trying to get out of there, and you told them, "Oh, we have a private jet coming just in order to capture the pictures you needed to on the beach." Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
well, she she was difficult, but very gracious at the same time. And, she
Mm-hmm.
always loved the pictures that we got. And so I shot
Yeah.
her on the beach with her sister. Um, and again, you just let them go, okay? Because they will work. I mean, the picture that I have in the portfolio is that Shane is having her hand on the butt of Thea, and the connection that was going on between them. Again, you can't pose that. You can't, all you can do is
Right.
be spontaneous and take the picture when it happens.
Absolutely. Especially in photography. I mean, that's when you get the best pictures, in my opinion. At
Yeah.
least I do.
So what about, what
um,
about what?
Tell us about Jenna Jameson and Tito Ortiz and what happened there, because that's a good story.
Yes. We had gone down again to Mexico. We were on an eco resort. Okay. Now, this eco resort had one time uh,
Hmm.
wine, too much drugs, and too many candles, and they burnt half the place down. So we went back to this place and they had rebuilt it. And it was very remote. One dirt road came into it. It went over a couple of streams, and it's very, very remote. And it's all kind of wood or bamboo. It's not concrete. It's not fire resistance or wind resistance. So a hurricane comes up the coast from the south. It's a category
Hmm.
4. It stops right off the coast from the resort and
Oh
spins
my
for a day.
God.
And so if it had come on shore, we couldn't get out. The roads were they were flooded from the rains, so there was no way out. We
Hmm.
were stuck there. So everybody thought they
Hmm.
were going to die, and so they drank a lot. They had no phones, no cell service, no
Hmm.
way to talk to
Hmm.
anybody, to call your loved one before you go into a whirlwind of a hurricane. But anyway, so it
Right.
it's everybody was scared. They were really scared, and so it wasn't that far offshore, and it just had to come in, or the outside of it, where the winds would have got us. But then it went up the coast and got to lower part of Mexico, and then went across Mexico and went into, I think, either Arizona or New Mexico. So it was a big storm. It
Mm.
lasted for a long time. But when we shot, we started to shoot the next day. We tried to shoot at the beach. The water's brown because so
Oh
much
yeah.
mud has gone into the water, and things are a
Sure.
little muddy and a little. But the sun came out and got beautiful pictures.
What photo shoot were you on where the DE?
Oh, that was
Okay.
okay. We were in Mexico.
Hmm.
There were 5 models from Germany. I had assistant, second assistant, uh, makeup, hair, stylist. Okay. So the place was a place called Correas. At that time, they had 5 old hotel that the owner had bought, along with 4 bungalows. Okay.
Mm.
And now it's one of the most expensive places in the world to go and buy a house, and it's hugely successful. But at the time, it was just a little place. So to get
Hmm.
privacy, I went, asked, where can
Hmm.
I go? Where's a beach? And so they send me. We go down. We go in our bus. 5 naked girls. The bus is stuck in the sand. So one of the assistants says, I got to go find somebody to get us out. So he goes
Right.
and he finds a farmer. The farmer comes driving up in his tractor, big tractor, turns it around, hooks up a chain, pulls us out. And he's looking, he doesn't speak English, okay? He just speaks Spanish. And he's looking at this, this, what's 5 naked girls and this crew doing out on the
Right.
beach? After we go back to shooting, then all of a sudden the federales show up. And they are, in their
Yikes.
half trucks, he likes the trucks with the machine guns on top, all carrying automatic
Hmm.
weapons. They don't speak
Hmm.
English. We don't speak Spanish.
Mm-mm.
And we can't explain
Mm-mm.
what's going on. So we had to go in to the jail, and they then called the DEA in Guadalajara. And Guadalajara was the center of the drug Mexican drug industry at that time. And so
Okay.
the place we were in was the state of Jalisco. Now, you go
Right.
to Jalisco now, because we used to go to Puerto Vallarta and just drive down for 3 hours to get to this hotel because it was so remote. Um, now, if you did that, you'd probably be either killed, captured, held for ransom, or put into
Yeah.
sex trafficking. We would just go
Right.
back and forth in the car. We'd get a Jeep with no top on it and be cruising down for 3 hours through the Mexican countryside. Carefree. But, they don't speak Spanish. They didn't speak English. They had to find out what we were doing.
Were they finally like realized the DEA was like, oh no, this is Playboy, and like let him go?
Well, you could talk to somebody in English now. Okay, we could explain what was going on,
No, right,
why we
right,
were
right. So
there,
you were able to explain.
why.
They're like, okay, let's talk about this project that you're working on. It's an episodic TV series called Shooting Sex. And why don't you tell us what it's about? And it's brilliant. And I'm so excited that you are doing this surrounding you and Marilyn Grabowski.
Well, it's a fictionalized account of Playboy
Mm-hmm.
from 1983 to 1999. Okay, because that
Okay.
was the kind of the heyday that I felt was digital didn't start till 1997. So
Mm-hmm.
there are a lot of stories, and being fictionalized, I can pull things in that maybe happened before or I wasn't necessarily that much of a part of. And they have a front end story, back end story, and then, the shooting. And it deals with Marilyn and I've tried to make it female friendly. I've tried to make it aspirational and inspirational because both Marilyn and I were we were told we weren't going anywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
we came to the top of the pyramid. And then with all the women that came through, some went back to what they were doing, some became stars, some got married. There's always a story, Rainy Day Jordan was a great story because she had never been out of Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And she came and she was so great in her posing and everything. And then she got hooked up with with the mansion. And she went to a couple parties and, she was faced with a big change in her lifestyle because she had a husband and a child back in West Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And so she came and she had the opportunity and she went back on her second trip and her daughter, she had a little daughter, and her daughter had seen her on the first trip. On the second trip, she was all kind of made up and dressed up, and she says, "Mama, I look just like you." And that was enough to go, no,
Yeah.
it's not all that it's made out to be. There's
Yeah.
too many temptations, too many things. Some of the women never go to the mansion, some do. But everybody, they have their aspirations. That's why they're there. Want something to come of this. So it's an
Right.
aspirational, inspirational story. Of not so much, Marilyn and I are the storytellers. And
Okay.
it's about all the people, the covers that I shot,
Mm-hmm.
pictorials, the centerfolds. It's about the models. It's behind the scenes. It's about
Nice.
Alexis. It's about my assistants. Okay. I had the opportunity, Judith Regan offered to do a book on me. And it
Okay.
was, she did the Jenna Jameson, How to Have Sex Like a Porn
Mm-hmm.
Star.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. She did she did a couple others, Howard Stern, I think. But she insisted that it be a true story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to do it because I don't want to be telling all the secrets of my staff, my crews,
Right.
and
Right.
everything that went on. So to protect my cruise, I passed on it. And it probably wasn't maybe the best decision. But, I had to be true to, because we were like family. My crews were like family. And they said
Yeah.
that because I took care of them. I didn't treat them like assistants. When I was shooting, I told them to sit on my shoulder, tell me what they see, what they think, what they suggest. I might use it. I might not use it. I might use it later. But
Interesting.
you're part of the shooting, and you have another set of eyes. So everybody on the set was to give me input if they had it.
I love that.
I couldn't betray them. Because
Right.
they all had their own stories. I mean,
Of
I don't know if you
course.
met.
Yeah. I mean, everybody had their own vantage point and your own personal experience, and they're all going to vary from person to person, even if you're working together.
So fictionalize, I would do the people that I photographed, like the celebrities, and that a great story on Belushi. But so I can use Belushi's name. I can use De Niro's name. And I don't want to use, Alexis's name. I'll make her, she has a made up name. Marilyn has a made up name. I have a made up name. But my lifestyle, how I did this, how I was in Utah, how I lived on ranches in Utah and California, how I had horses all the time.
Right.
How I didn't know what I was doing, how things progressed. That's all in there. And then the stories behind that we're talking about, like Jenna Jameson or the girls in Mexico. So everybody had a story.
Awesome. Well, I really believe that's going to be very well received and being spearheaded by an Academy Award winning producer.
It's not about the mansion. It's not about Hef. Okay.
Which is good because there's too much out there that's all focused on the mansion and on Hef.
Yeah, there's a number of women that are, jumping on the bandwagon. If you say something nasty, you can make money from it. I mean, Crystal was a big disappointment to me because I was friends with her. I shot all of her pictures. She didn't need to do that. She got $10 million when he died. She left out a lot of things that paint a different picture.
Oh, completely. So, I listened to her whole book and I was like, what the hell is she saying? Like, this is not,
Well, her mom lived at the mansion.
I know. And she said she had nobody there. I know.
She had nobody there. And she was so traumatically affected by it. And Holly Madison Holly Madison, she got the opportunity to be an editor. Gave her a job to be an editor. And that she didn't have the talent to be an editor. So it's unfortunate that these women have decided to trash Hef and the mansion. There's a lot of things that went on. There's no question about that. There's a lot of people, and Hef's sex life was his business. But I'll tell you something.
Exactly.
I'll tell you, there's a documentary, okay? I don't think many people know about it, on Hef. And there were two people assigned to it, this woman and this man from different sources, and they were given it. They both had the opera. They both said, you're going to do this. And they both didn't want to. And the woman talked to her husband and said, I can't do this. I don't want to be around Hugh Hefner. He said, well, you're just starting out. You need to do this because they're going to give it to somebody else. The man, he went to his pastor. He got the exact same answer. Somebody else is going to do this. You need to do this interview. So they approached it from, it's a nice interview because it's a documentary. So they approached it from not half what he did, but why he did it. So they went back into his childhood. They talked about his relationship with his mom. They talked about this stuffed animal that got his mom burned. A dog they got from a pound that died right away. He felt unloved, okay? And in growing up, he carried that with him. And that's one of the things he and we didn't, I didn't know about his childhood, and he never knew about mine. So we pretty much had a very similar childhood. I felt I was unloved. I was always looking for love. Before I was a Playboy, in my 20s, I was married 3 times. Okay.
3 times? Dang. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
In my 20s.
In your 20s.
It wasn't what I chose or interesting. But you didn't. At the end of the documentary, when it was finished, they said they were so positive about Hef. They said he did all these things, the magazine, the clubs, everything was so he would be loved. Because then he never really found the love, and then the final portrayal is Crystal.
The worst. It's after having many conversations, especially with his closest friends, and asking them, what was that like for you to watch what was going on from the time that like the girls next door came in till, Crystal. I mean, that's when Playboy went downhill. When it was sold, it was over. Like Playboy, as we knew, it was over. The caliber of the girls, and then Holly stepping in as an editor. Give me a fucking break. That woman had no idea what she was doing. But it's very apparent to me now, and I would say Karina and a couple other of us, that from talking to his closest confidants that were there through it all, they all said, he made horrible decisions at the end of his life, but he was getting older. We all will get older. Our mind will go, and when the vision goes, right? And he really felt that these women loved him. I mean, he really did. And he had no idea that Crystal would come and do what the hell she did. Like, he would have never gone into that, or he would have never made her the president of the foundation, whatever. And it's just so sad because he was completely taken advantage of. And Kimberly Hefner, I had a conversation with her, direct quote from her. She said, "The only thing I will say is that what happened is 1000% elder abuse." And I was like, I can't agree with you more.
Yeah. I don't think Crystal, well, there's mixed things. She left him on the altar at one point.
Right.
Do you know why? How that happened? And why she came back? That's not in the book, I'm sure.
Oh, it is in the book, but her version makes no fucking sense. So no, tell me why, because it's not clear.
Well, she did a music demo with a guy named Blakey, okay, big music producer. And she sounded great. And she listened to this and she thought she was going to be a new rock star. And so she could see that as a vehicle to leave Hef because she's going to have her own money. She's going to have her own fame. And she took up an affair with Dr. Phil's son. Okay, right. So she was having an affair with Dr. Phil's son.
Right. Now, she talks about that.
And then what happened is that in leaving Hef said, well, I'm going to pay for your music career. And when she met with Blakey, he said, you can't sing. This was done on the computer.
Right.
So she now had nowhere to go. So she went back to Hef. And I do think that she had really strong affections for him because I watched her and them interact a lot. And, like I said, I shot all of her pictures. So I think it was just somebody talked her into, if you're going to write a book and you can make all this money, you got to trash the situation.
Yeah, and strike while the iron's hot, because Holly Madison is out there producing, the Playboy murder show, affiliating all these tragic incidents that had happened to women that were either in Playboy or Playmates that had nothing to do with them, or like Playboy did not murder them, right? So she's got that show plus her book. And so, of course, Crystal jumped on the bandwagon, and it's like you can see straight through it. We can see straight through it, but general public believes everything that these girls are saying. And so thank God, again, that we have like this platform and we can have these real authentic conversations with people that were there that got to see firsthand, you know, and there's two versions to the story. It's not just one-sided.
Kimberly was married to Hef for 21 years. He had two
Right.
kids. It
Right.
wasn't, the easiest of relationships,
Right.
but she was there,
Mm-hmm.
and she wrote a little piece to say that everything these women are doing was
Right.
not really the norm, because there's 700, 800 playmates. How
Signed
many
it.
have
Yeah.
complained? Yeah, how
Yeah.
many have complained?
None. It's all these
Two,
girlfriends.
three?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Thank God. I've been grateful to be able to talk to Kimberly, and I've invited her on the show. She's hesitant to do anything, but I think at some point she will come on. But again, it's just her complete and utter respect and love and affinity for Hef stands and will always be there. And she, if anybody was going to say something about a bad experience, it would be somebody who was married to him for 21 years. She has nothing to say that's negative. These girls, it's a money grab, obviously.
I really don't believe that what's in Crystal's book, she really feels 100% on it. I feel she did it for, there's a big payday at the end of it.
And she didn't even write the book. She had a ghostwriter, so it's not even her. It's the ghostwriter. Yeah. So yes, we're in agreement on that. So anyway, well, cool. I'm glad that you actually brought that up, and there are people from Playboy that can have a different vantage point, and we're able to share it.
And my TV show is to be very positive. It's behind the scenes.
Right.
And a lot of crazy things went on behind the scenes. And it doesn't mean that everybody was having sex left and right, but just the personalities, and the situations, my life is crazy. Alexis' life was crazy. Jennifer Tudor had a very stable life, a loving husband, still married, still doing great. John Cranon had a very tragic end to his life. There was another stylist that committed suicide. She was involved with an actor. And he went back to his wife. He went back to his wife, and she was so distraught she got in the bathtub and cut her wrist.
Fortunately, there are those stories, but it's not like a direct. I don't know. It's not like Playboy did it to them. It's just.
It's not that Playboy did it. No.
Yeah.
Playboy was for 98% of the women. It was a positive experience. That were photographed, and that were playmates, and were really Playboy. Like I said, the girlfriends, Holly and the other two, they were never to be playmates. They could not be playmates.
Never.
And the same thing. Well, with Crystal, she was a playmate, but
that's because she married. Yeah, Hef was like, okay, you're going to run away from me. You're going to come back, then whatever, make you playmate and put you on the cover.
Yeah.
So anyway, do you recall the name of that documentary that you were just telling me about the man and woman that interviewed Hef and had great things to say when they were all done?
I can send you the tape. Yes.
Cool.
It would be, I think, a great guest for you, because they're very positive. They're very positive about Hef. Very positive.
And their hesitation initially to not want to do it, and then to do it and come out.
It was no, we don't.
It was like hard no. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and if you want a career, you got to go do it.
Yeah,
and they were very surprised by him, and his humility and his caring about people, all the charitable things that he was involved in. He doesn't get credit for that.
He doesn't. And we talk about it all the time on here, because again, I didn't even know half the stuff that he was involved in, and his philanthropic endeavors are vast and many, and it does not get discussed enough. I mean, it really needs to be known forever. And I'm sorry, at the end of the day, people are just going to try to, decimate the history of Playboy and of Hugh Hefner. Well, it's not going to happen. It's history. It's part of America. It's American culture. What would America be without Playboy? It'd be very different, I think.
No, it wouldn't be probably. Okay.
Yeah.
Playboy sent outside of New York and Los Angeles. Playboy set style, was an arbiter of what was beautiful and what was sexual. And Marilyn Grabowski was the biggest arbiter of all on what was sexy, because she made the decision on who was to get in and how it would go, and her best decision was hiring me.
Yay, I concur. That's excellent. That's a perfect way to end the show. I love that. So, okay, before we leave, at the end of each interview, we ask our guests 2 questions. Okay. So, first question, 3 words that define Hugh Hefner to you.
A creative genius.
Perfect. 3 words. A creative genius. Okay. And had you had the chance to say anything to Hef before he passed or in memoriam, what would you say?
In a letter that I wrote him before he died, it was a big thank you that he gave me an opportunity that I would not have had. And I'm glad that I was able to live up to his expectations.
That's the general answer from everybody, is just thank you. Thank you for including me on this journey. Thank you for the opportunity. So I love that. Thank you, Stephen.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, that was a wonderful show. Thank you so much for tuning in, to our audience around the world. Thank you for your love and your support. Please follow us at the Bunny Chronicles Podcast, or Bunny Chronicles Podcast, on Instagram. We also have our Facebook page, Bunny Chronicles Podcast, our YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to support the show, you can support us at Patreon. Thank you so much to the audience. We appreciate you, Stephen.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful.
Thank you.